Hello, and welcome to the Thyroid Warrior podcast. I'm Ebony, and I'm here as your wellness facilitator. I'm going to be sharing my experiences in managing Hashimoto's disease, and I really hope that it'll help you on your personal journey. Keep in mind, however, this does not substitute as medical advice. It is only for your information and motivational purposes only. Now, let's get started. Hello, friends. I want to take some time to dive deeper into the conversation about what it means to restore ourselves. And I have been listening to quite a bit of podcasts. I've been doing a lot of reading lately. And one thing that I'm very grateful for is the podcast episode that I listened to yesterday with Ashley Bowden and the Truth Doctor. And while it was talking about how do we feel safe in our business, it struck several chords with me. And I want to be able to share those things with you today. And the topic that I really want to focus on today is the secret sauce. And that could look very different for everyone. But I'm learning in this season that I'm in, which you may or may not have noticed, I had a lot of questions the last time we spoke, and that was purposeful because I've been asking myself so many questions about why am I it's almost like that quarter or midlife crisis when you're like, what am I doing? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? And it's just, it can be a lot. Especially when you are actively working on the healing process and you're trying very hard to do the absolute best you can to be someone that helps your family, to be a good friend, to be a good partner. And there are so many things to consider. And sometimes you can ask yourself the question of, where do I even begin? Where do I even start? And that episode that I just referenced from the Truth Doctor was just game-changing and mind-blowing. And the question that I asked myself is, do I feel safe here? Do I feel safe here? And that can look very, very different for each of us. And in previous podcast episodes, I've asked you the question of, does this make me happy? Does this bring me joy? But as I'm working through a lot of grief and trauma, the question that I am now asking is, do I feel safe here? Does this make me feel safe? Do these people make me feel safe? And if they don't, why? And that is such a difficult thing to ask ourselves. And it can seem so strange, but I sat down yesterday and I really wrote those things down. And when I did not feel safe about something, when I did not feel like I was being held, I asked myself the question of, well, why do I feel that way? And what comes up for me when I think about those things or that person or that group or whatever it is. And Beyonce's album has come out this year, and we've heard the popular song Break My Soul. And that song really and truly has resonated with me, but I didn't really understand why until I started examining these questions. So I want you to take some time and sit down and really think, what makes me safe? And I'll give you the example of social media because I find that comparison is a very real thing, but I'm also learning how important it is to compare products and not people, because each of us has things underneath the surface that we don't even know that that person is dealing with. But we make so many assumptions about each other And sometimes we just need to stop and think, well, gee, like, why, where's that coming from? Or what happened to you? It's a common question or thing that we ask when working with children who have been exposed to trauma. And it seems so weird to think about it in an adult context, but I really encourage you to look up ACE, or adverse childhood experiences, because it really and truly can help us as we're exploring the questions of, does this make me feel safe? And the reason why I bring up adverse childhood experiences is because 1 in 6 adults have experienced 4 or more types of ACE events. And I think that is, it's just wild. And that's what I mean by, dang, like we just don't know what people may or may not have experienced growing up. And that doesn't excuse the behavior, but it can often give us an idea or an overview of how to really and truly manage, like, just working with someone. And even from a health outcome perspective, it can really and truly lead to things like depression or COPD, or just different issues with coronary heart disease, our blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, obesity. And that's another reason why I tend to focus so much on advocacy, and why I'm really and truly looking more at social determinants of health. And I recorded a previous podcast episode about that to give you more context. So I encourage you to take a listen to that. But it's just so important to think about that. So as you understand this, and I also just want to take a second, because you may also be asking, well, what's an adverse childhood event? Let me back up. So there are about 10 of those things that can impact you as a child. And it can be abuse of any kind, whether it's physical, sexual, or emotional neglect. So physical or emotional mental illness, divorce, substance abuse, any type of domestic violence, and also having a relative that has been incarcerated or has been put in jail. And when we don't resolve those things, they manifest in our bodies. And sometimes we can have unhealthy ways of coping with those things, or trying to numb ourselves. But I really and truly have been learning about how real this is. And as I am going through my studies and my program for graduate school, I'm realizing just how impactful the things that we experience as a child, how they can impact us. So even if you are working with me and I may ask you some of those questions, it's not that I'm trying to be invasive, but I'm also trying to get that full picture of what's going on with you. And obviously consent will always be asked prior to asking some of those questions, because it's a sensitive topic, and a lot of people don't care to talk about it, for good reason. Because why would we want to bring that up? Why would we want to bring harm to ourselves? But my question is, even if you don't bring that up when we're talking, or when you're meeting with a coach or what have you, think about that from the context of when you go to the doctor. Because if you have issues when it comes to dealing with those emotions and that trauma that you may have experienced as a child, that can also manifest from an authority figure perspective when you go to the doctor and you may be asking yourself, especially when you're getting questioned during intake, that can bring up a lot for you. And I sometimes want to take it a step further, because sometimes we think about white coat syndrome when your blood pressure gets high, you're nervous, you're at the doctor, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. But for many of us, that trauma associated with misdiagnosis, with being treated poorly at the doctor or the hospital, that also adds to our current lived experiences from our childhood. So we're really just piling on so many things. And that's why I want to take it back to that secret sauce, or asking, am I safe here? And how can you incorporate that question when you're walking through life? And I'm going to talk about next time in terms of walking that out and giving you plenty of examples of what that can look like. But I really wanted to take some time to digest it for myself, because I'm just going to give you a fair warning. Your process of walking through this may look very different. So I just wanted to give you that disclaimer and just remind you to be very gentle with yourself, because this can bring up a lot. But next time we talk, we are going to dive into more examples. So with that, be happy, be whole, and be well. Take care. Okay, thyroid warriors, get out there and take things one step at a time. Remember, reflect on your triumphs, know that you are doing your best, and do what you need to do in order to be well. I would absolutely love it if you subscribe to this podcast and share this episode with a friend. And don't forget, leave me a review. I read those and try very hard to improve the show based upon your feedback. So I'd love to hear from you. And with that, be happy, be whole, and be well. Take care.